Hello everyone! Hello friends! So today I'm going to show you our garden. Our garden's mostly planted, but it's been rainy lately and the grass, as you can see here, this side here, I'll show you, the grass also growing. You see that? I have 2 rows of green beans here, but because of rain, the green grass are also growing. It's about an inch or so, an inch and a half. If you don't have mulch on your garden, this is overwhelming to control. So as early as an inch height, the grass that's growing on your garden, you need to control them. You either put mulch to cover it as thick as 6 inches, or you manually weed because you don't want competitors in your garden, because weeds are going to compete with the nutrients and you will have vegetables, the plants that will be growing weak and lack of nutrients and that kind of thing. So hello everyone, it's me again, Marie. Today I'm going to show you several options that you can use or you can do to maintain a garden, especially controlling weeds. We all know that the idea of having a big garden is nice and the harvest time, but the fact is, before we even get to the harvest time, there's a lot of things that we need to do. The maintenance of having a garden, the watering, what kind of watering do you use? Do you do manual watering every morning and in the evening? Or do you do automatic drip irrigation, or you rely heavily on rainwater? So wherever you are, in your local area, there are other ways that you can do, that you can use, practical ways that you can do to maintain a garden. And obviously, one of the maintenance really is weed control. Weed control is a big problem because that's one of the reasons why we are here in this world. It's cursed. It's part of the curse. Now we have to deal with weeds. The Bible says that because the world is cursed because of sin, now we have to deal with thistles and thorns, weeds and pests in the garden. So when you have a garden, you have to consider all these things: pest control, weed control, water system and irrigation, and just in general, how you maintain a garden for you to get a good and healthy harvest. So today I'm going to talk about weed control. Okay, weed control. We already planted mostly, and there's a lot of vegetables growing in our garden. And because of that, because of the rain, we know whether it rains or not, weeds, because they are strong in nature, they are pesky in nature, that's why they grow anytime, any day. And because we've been having rain recently, and you can see there's green grass growing, and they're about an inch and a half. A tip for you, if you have a garden, if you don't want to deal with weeds, first is you mulch your garden. Put like 6 to 7 inches mulch. A mixture of small, medium, and bigger sizes of mulch. There are several places that you can get a mulch. Some city limits and counties, depending on where you are, they actually have free mulch. Like if you happen to be near the area where power lines people, the maintenance of power lines, they do clearing along the roads and along the power lines, they would say in the back of their tractor or whatever they're using that they put free mulch. So you go ask them that you want mulch, please dump whatever you can, however much you have. The mulch needs to be of varying sizes, because you don't want mulch that are just thick bark, because the downside of having just a size as thick as bark, the microorganism that lives in the soil, if you put mulch, it will not just have good bacteria, but it will also harbor fungus, unwanted fungus. So mold will grow in it. So the process of decomposition of the mulch, if it's too big and too thick, it will cause a lot of heat buildup, and then it will cause root rot in some of your vulnerable plants, and you don't want that. So it must be mulch with varying sizes, from small to bigger size, to medium size to bigger sizes. So it would be a combination of twigs, small branches, and leaves. That's a perfect mulch for your garden. So once you establish a garden, the way to control weeds is to put mulch. And eventually, the smaller sizes of the mulch that you put, like the leaves, will get decomposed first, and the bigger chunks will stay on top. And the thicker the mulch, the better, because it will suppress the weeds that are trying to grow. The sun does not penetrate, but it will just keep the moisture in. So there's many benefits to having mulch, but as long as your mulch is of varying sizes, not just one size of bark and all. I discourage putting bark in your garden as a mulch. It has to be mulch of different sizes. So you can also buy a chipper. There's bark and leaves chipper that you can buy, that you can chip, you can chop your own branches that you have in your property. That's also another way to do it. So you can either buy mulch of different sizes, or you can ask your local county, the one that does the clearing of power lines. They will have free mulch for you, and of course you can buy them too, but it gets expensive. But why buy if you have some free in your county or in your city area? But anyway, so mulching is a great way to prevent weeding, okay, intensive weeding. Once the mulch decomposes, it will add nitrogen to your soil. That's a good side about having mulch of varying sizes, because it not only suppresses the weed growth, but it will also decompose, and it will be mixed, and it will add nitrogen to your soil, as long as you have mulch that have different sizes. Another way to suppress or to control weeds in your garden is to use a landscape fabric that you can put, or you can line your garden after you plant, to prevent weeds from growing. And another method, the third method, is the manual weeding. There are ways that you can keep your garden weeded. You don't have to use the mulch, you don't have to use the fabric or the plastic liner that covers the ground, but you have to use manual weed or manual tools. And the key is, if you're relying on weeding yourself, the weeding is you make sure that the weeds are this high, only an inch high, so that it's easy to scrape, because once it grows to this length, to this height, it gets really overwhelming, and weeds are not good. They don't belong in your garden, because your plants, the vegetables, fruits that you are trying to plant, the weeds are competitors. They will suck up every nutrients that you have in your garden, so it will leave your plants malnourished, because by nature weeds are just pesky, and they are stronger, and they are that way anyway. So whatever means we can to suppress and control the weeds in our garden. So anyway, I have tools here that you can use. This one is another way to use. This one is a scraper. This one is a handheld or a manual hoe. This scraper here is going to scrape the weeds, and then you do it in the morning. That way the sun will bake the weeds that you just scrape off the surface. So you have to do this when the weeds are about an inch high, an inch or two, because it's easy to scrape, including the roots. Here's another tool that you can use as a manual weeder. This one here is like a scuffle hoe, but the side here, it has a blade. The blade is also going to, this one is, you can hold it like this. It stirs the dirt and it scrapes the weeds, including the roots. So again, do the scraping using this scuffle hoe and the blade when the weeds are only an inch or two high. If you don't have the scuffle hoe, you can use this, just a regular hoe. This is another tool that you can use to scrape the weeds. If your garden is bigger, you kind of need help. This one here is another tool that you can use to weed your garden. It has a wheel, so it makes your weeding quicker and faster. You don't have to rely on your muscle and your strength to push. There you go. This one is a good tool to have, especially if you only have a small garden. You can easily control the weeds, so having these tools is really handy. And of course, one of the common weed control that big farmers use especially, but not much on the smaller gardeners, is the use of herbicides or weed killer. But I have faith that most of us small gardeners don't use weed killer, especially the chemical based. But there are other weed killers that are organic or biodegradable, or is eco-friendly. There are weed killers that are eco-friendly, but most of the weed killers, the herbicides that big farmers use to kill weeds on big farms are not really good for you. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of food allergies, food allergens on our food, and it's not really good. So I would say that use the best and the good practice for gardening and weeding. Garden practices that it's not going to harm your plants, that's going to harm your food, and not going to harm your soil. If there's a will, there's a way. We'll just have to do whatever we can to have a good garden, to have healthy plants, so that later our plants, our vegetable plants, will produce healthy vegetables for us to enjoy and eat. So the weeding on this part is done. I just use the tools we have. I use the weeder with a wheel, and I use a small hoe, and I use a long-handled hoe, and I use a scuffle hoe. So that's it. If there's a will, there's a way. As I said earlier, that there are several ways that you can do or you can use to maintain a clean or weed-free garden. You can either use mulch, you can use tools for weeding, especially if you only have a small garden. You can use a landscaping fabric or a plastic tarp, or you can use an herbicide, whether it's chemical-based or natural-based. Whatever you use, whatever you do for your garden to make it clean and weed-free, I hope you will do it responsibly and for your health. I hope this video is useful to you. Please make a comment in the comment section. What tools do you use in your garden? And what tips you can share with me and with others, with other gardeners. Until next time, thanks for watching.